Well, good morning. My name is William Thompson. I am a historian here with the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, where I have been here for over 20 years. While I am not an expert, I do have some experience in doing this type of genealogy. Today's presentation is based on what has helped and worked for me over the last couple of decades, and the techniques that I have found to be almost tried and true. Of course, with any kind of genealogy, you have to be careful because your path is not going to be the same as anyone else's. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. The Mississippi Department of Archives and History was established in 1902, thereby making MDAH the second oldest state department of archives and history in the United States, second to Alabama, which was founded in 1901. We are a comprehensive agency that collects, preserves, and provides access to resources, informations, artifacts created by the citizens and agencies of this state. We then organize, preserve, and prepare these records and artifacts for use by present and future generations. In essence, you can say that we are simply stewards of the history of this great state. Our holdings include state and county government records, provincial records, which of course for Mississippi, provincial records would cover French, Spanish, and English dominion, territorial records, Native American records, genealogical materials. We also have journals, periodicals, diaries, personal manuscripts, court cases, newspapers, maps, books, photos, film, microfilm, microfiche, and a wide range of electronic and or digital born archives as well. The main research facility for the department is located right here at 200 North Street in Jackson, Mississippi, where we are open on Mondays from 9 to 5, Tuesday through Fridays 8 to 5, and most Saturdays we're here 8 to 1. The Saturday schedule will be affected by different activities that may be scheduled in the city of Jackson that may encumber access to our building. Now, we have 3 reading rooms available to the public, the archival reading room, the media reading room, and the public reading room. The first area you will encounter after obtaining your researcher's card is the public reading room, which is the largest of the 3. It is filled mostly with books with varying topics. Most of it is Mississippiana, a lot of genealogical material as well. The media reading room is at the far end of our area where you will have access to our microfilm and microfiche holdings, as well as our digital collection and our digital born archival material. The archival reading room is right behind the glass on to your right hand side. This is where some items are considered to be one of a kind, irreplaceable, or hard to replace will be viewed. And this will be your manuscripts, your maps, your books, your photographs, your government records, and so forth. That brings us to the very popular question, well, what kind of research can I do at the archives? Well, because our holdings are so diverse, the door is really wide open as to what type of research our materials can be used for. Now, genealogy is certainly one of my favorite and by far, to me, our dominant use that we've encountered. But we get a good number of scholars working on films, books, dissertations, talks. Our visitors have included community leaders, elected officials, attorneys, the average citizen researching various topics of interest. We also help students mostly in high school and college age with different projects. And of course, we also get a bunch of folks that come in from out of state as well as out of the country. In our media reading room, we have, in our holdings, we have thousands of books. We have over 40,000 rolls of microfilm. We have manuscript records and other resources. So if you are just grasping at straws, then you may be able to waste an entire day and never be in the right place to hit your target. So with any type of research, you really need to know what you are looking for. Now, I want you to avoid the I want to see everything you have mentality. To me, that's kind of a no-no because in the world of research, things come available at times because remember the census records are released once every 72 years. So if you were not here last year, you didn't have access to the 1950 census. So you come in last year and said you want to see everything we have. Well, this year we got something else, but I still don't know everything that you already have. So your research as an ongoing process really needs to have a target, okay? So have in mind what you want to find so that you don't risk duplicating your previous efforts. Now, one of the best ways to get on the right trail is to talk to somebody who is familiar with your topic before your visit. Talk to your family members, your colleagues, do some internet researching, talk to other researchers and friends, anybody you can think of so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Now, this is especially crucial when you're doing African American history. Talk to your older family members. For us, this is a great and dwindling resource. When you get into your genealogy and you start finding things, you have questions that only some of the older folks can answer. The best technique that I have found is that if you ask them some leading questions, don't interrupt, set you a recorder, just get them to talking and let them talk. Ask them leading questions. Well, who was this? Oh, where did they live? When was that? Just let them talk. Even if it sounds like they're babbling or rambling on, let them talk. You will hear some gems as you go along. Make notes while they're talking, but you let them talk. All right? Oh, y'all are quiet today. All right, so in my experience, I find it helpful to start with what you know and work your way back to what you don't know or what you are trying to find out. When you're starting, you want to gather up and chart out your names, your dates. You want to make notes and put them in some sort of intelligible order. And then you're going to use this chart as a roadmap to find and fill in your gaps. So when compiling your genealogy, of course, you want names. You want dates of birth and death, dates of marriage. Who did they marry? When did and where did this person live? Who are their parents? Who are their siblings? Who are their children? Did they move out of the state of Mississippi? If they did, when did they move out of the state of Mississippi? Now, I can see on some of y'all's faces already that you're saying, this is exactly what I'm trying to find out. I understand. Amen. But some of this information you already have, and you don't need to repeat looking for it. So the information you do have will help you focus and drive your research. There's no need to look for somebody on the 1950 census when you know they died before 1930. They're not going to be there. However, you may find a surviving spouse, a child, or a sibling. So you need to know who you're looking for and when. Dates of birth and death are your bookends to the potential paper trail that somebody may leave. Dates of marriage tell you when to search for this person by their information versus their parents' information. And in some cases, it will also tell you when to expect a name change. All of these factors are identifiers for researching your ancestors, and you will need to use them in order to be sure that you're going in the right direction and that you are not spinning your wheels. So genealogy research for any race uses some of the same basic techniques and resources. Now, there will be some differences, but for the most part, we all use the same records, or record types, and even the same process. We just have to use them in a different way at a certain point. Now, these record types would be your census records, your marriage records, death certificates, obituaries, county authored records such as deeds, wills, and some court records. Now, names of slaves could appear in county authored records, your bills of sales, your will records, and especially your deed records prior to 1865. But by and large, you cannot search the indexes by the names of the enslaved person. You have to use the name of the slave owner. There are rare occurrences when the slave's name will appear in an index, but again, by and large, the owner is the one making the transaction, and the slave's name is listed within the record itself, but not in the indexing. Now, as for marriage records, enslaved persons generally will not have a marriage record in the county courthouse holdings. If you are fortunate enough to locate a manuscript or a journal or a diary or some other record created by the owners, then you can expect or possibly find a record of births, marriages, or deaths for the enslaved person. But let me express to you that this will be a rare occurrence for most of us, because a lot of these diaries and journals that some slave owners kept did not survive, did not get turned over to an institution for preservation. So I cannot say for 100% certainty this will be in every case, but I have not seen where these record types were kept in any official capacity or recorded at the county level for the enslaved persons. So from 1950 back to 1870, we all use the census records the same. In fact, the census takers messed up white information just as bad as they did black information. But however, they did not record differing information or use different forms for one race versus another. Our technique, however, would differ at a certain point, and that's because before the 1870 census, African Americans were not listed individually by name unless they were freed and listed as a free person or color, or listed as a free black. So before 1870, we used different techniques. We used different things. We used things like the slave schedules from 1850 and 1860, where enslaved persons were listed under the owner's name and by categories, such as age, sometimes complexion, as in black or mulatto, and of course gender, but not their given names. So going back from 1870 to the 1870 census to the 1860 census, look for white names in the same county area that have similar names to the formerly enslaved person, and then check the slave schedules for that white person or that white family to see if they have slaves that would come close to the age of the person you are tracing. Now, once you get to this point, you are using a lot of guesswork. So don't let it frustrate you that you're not seeing what you want to see the way you want to see it. You have to use some intelligent guessing to put your pieces together. Remember, a family genealogy is nothing more than a puzzle. Some puzzles you have pieces already in your hand and you know where they fit. Other puzzles you have to find the pieces and then see where they are going to fit. Genealogy is just that way. It's a puzzle that you have to find your pieces and then fit your pieces together. So when you're looking at the 1870 census at someone who was of age to have been enslaved and hoping they did not change their name but kept the former owner's name or something similar, you want to see what county they're living in and then go back looking for whites in that same area who could have been slave owners, and then compile a list of those. Then you want to go back to the 1860 census to see where these white persons are living and check the 1860 slave schedule to see if they are listed and if they have a slave that matches the would-be age of the person you are trying to find. Okay, what I'm telling you is that you'll take the former owner's name. You'll go look for them on the 1870 census if they're in the same county area or somewhere close to the relative that you are looking for. If that relative is, let's say, age 60 and on the 1870 census, going back to the 1860 census, you find that same white person, see if they're on the slave schedule for 1860, and if they have let's say, a male age 50 or somewhere in there. Of course, most slaves didn't really know exactly how old they were. So it's kind of a guessing game to make sure that you're in the right time period. Of course, you're not going to be looking for somebody who's age 20 on the 1860 slave schedule if your person was age 50. There will not be that big of an age gap. However, some ages, it may be a couple of years off one way or the other. So don't take it for granted that if you see a person, a male age 55, and then say, oh, that's not him. It could very well be him. It's just they don't know exactly how old he is. So don't discount it until you find something that's linking them one to the other. All right, that makes sense to everybody so far? Okay, good. All right, so here we have a 1850 slave schedule. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of slots that are missing names, okay? Can y'all see that? I know y'all can't see the detail in it, but you should be able to see where, like here, this is Josiah Sims. Isaiah Sims. This is the slave owner's name, and each one of these persons is an individual slave. So he has one slave, which is a black male age 69, I believe that is. Now, if he had more than one slave listed here of that matched that description, that first number would be different. So you notice we've got the slave owner's name, but not the slave's name. So this is why when you get to this level, you're doing a lot of guesswork, and you cannot take anything for granted. Make sure you make a note of it, and don't discount it until you've made the connection one way or the other. You've got to find some other type of document to list the person's name, the slave's name, to that particular owner. But if that matches the person that you're kind of looking for as far as the age and the description, keep that in mind until you make that link. Okay, I hope I'm making sense to you all. Now, if you can link them from 1870 to 1860, then you bump back to the 1850 census for the same white side and check the 1850 slave schedule to see if there is a slave listed under them, that same person, matching or comes close to that person's age or descriptions. You can also check the Freedmen's Bureau labor records and labor contracts and indentures to see if you can connect the former slave owner to the formerly enslaved person. We'll touch on Freedmen's Bureau records in just a bit. Now, after you are able to establish the potential former owners, then you are ready to search your county records, your bills of sale, your will records, probate records, and deeds. Once you link the enslaved person to an owner, you then begin to trace the owner's records to see if there are recorded transactions that document the movement of the enslaved person. And again, I want to give you fair warning. This level of research can be daunting, it can be frustrating, and it also could get expensive if you have to travel from one state to another in order to link more records. But if you are diligent and keep your head about you, it can also be very rewarding. County records are another resource that is common to any race, but for African Americans, we did not or could not have official marriage records prior to 1865, and the same with deed records and other county authored records. Now that is unless we were freed prior to. African Americans or enslaved persons will not show up by name on these records unless they are the topic of the transaction being conducted, and again generally would not appear in the indexing, so you really need to know the owner's name in order to trace them. What we have here is a portion of a Claiborne County estate record of Josiah Thomas, where it lists the names of several slaves and their collective values. Now, while this is only lists the first or given names of the enslaved person, this establishes the link that you're looking for from the former owner to the formerly enslaved person. And it also documents the movement of these persons. This could have been a estate sale that just Mr. Thomas had died, and now these slaves that he has left behind are either being bequeathed to one of his family members, or having been sold off in order to cover the whatever debts were left on his estate. What this document would do for you is say, this person that you're looking for is no longer in this place, now they're over here with someone else. It would tell you, if this was a bill of sale, it would tell you that Mr. Thomas sold slave John to Mr. whoever. And then you would look for that next person in line until you can continuously trace that person back. Again, everybody won't be able to do this because you may not find the records that you're looking for, but this is the technique that you would actually use. Okay? Now, once you have made that connection, you can now search for other deeds, other bills of sale, slave schedules, and so forth to see if these slaves have been sold and where they may have been purchased from. In some cases, you may have to go to another state. If Mr. Thomas was originally from South Carolina, then you would then have to go to South Carolina to see if there are other slave transactions that match up for any one of these persons that you are looking for. Again, that's why I said sometimes this can be daunting and rather expensive if you're one that has to travel from one place to the other. Mortality schedules are another type of census record, and we have here at the archives the 1850, 1860, 1870, and 1880 mortality schedules, which coincided with the recording of the federal census for each of those years. These were a census of those who died in the previous few months leading up to, or even the previous year leading up to that particular census recording. In the 1850 index, race can be discerned by the occupation code to the far right side, and the code number, which is, if you see here on the document on the right, this code number here on the far right is 144. That is the code for the occupation of being a slave. Now, of course, you also see here on the far left, and this again is, I think this is the 1860 over here. I'm at a bad angle here, excuse me. You see here on the far left, some of these are listed as Negro. Excuse me. Now, mortality schedules will give you the name, age, marital status, cause of death, race, place of birth, and the month of death. This is where if you find someone you're looking for on a mortality schedule, this information could be very helpful because somebody knew where that person came from, especially if they were not native to Mississippi. So that is another excellent source of information for you. Now, mortality schedules generally do not link the next of kin, but sometimes they will link for you the enslaved person to their former owner. And I've got the 1870 and 1880 here. Now, by 1870 and 1880, you no longer have the occupation code of 144. However, you see some of these have X's next to them. Those are African, that is how they denoted African Americans, with an X. Also, you see here on the far right where they have also Indian. Now, it's a rare occasion to see Indian printed out like that. So we can be pretty much sure that that person is Native American. But now, however, some of these other persons that have X's next to them may have been mulattoes living in general society and not telling folks that they were actually Indian. So if you are doing Native American research, do not throw the baby out with the bathwater here, because some of these folks just might be the person you're looking for, and it just does not say out to the side that they are Indian. You make sure you do your due diligence in tracing them to see where that Native American ancestry comes into play. Okay, so, excuse me. We also have Freedmen's Bureau records, which include some marriage records, banking records, and labor contracts. The labor contracts were sometimes executed between the formerly enslaved person and their previous owner. We also have the orphaned and indentured contracts, were oftentimes used to apprentice children and orphaned persons to a former owner. Now, that was the indentures were not always executed with the former owner. Sometimes it was just someone in the same area that kind of was familiar with the person. These labor contracts sometimes list entire families with names, ages, and genders, and the payment terms of their work agreement. And sometimes you'll see them printed out with a pre-printed form, and other times you'll see the entire thing written out in handwriting. So this will be a good exercise to get to familiarize yourself with that late 18th, early 19th century handwriting. I know a lot of folks are having a hard time reading cursive writing these days. Some of these are well written. Some of these are, man, they'll make your eyes go cross. So But this is a good exercise to get to learn how those strokes for each character and letter were made, so you can familiarize yourself with how to read these items. At least be able to scan through and find the information within it that you're looking for. Now, I'm not as familiar with the Register of Orphan and Indentured Persons as I would like to be. They're kind of a new record form for me. I haven't dived into them to any extent. But I'm finding that they did not always link the formerly enslaved person to their former owner. Sometimes the names are different, and the people on these indentures have been brought in from other areas. So if you are led to these records, you will find that a number of them did not always have the same surname as the person in which they were being apprenticed to. Now, it's worth checking the slave schedules of the white person and to see where they are, just to make sure you're covering all of your bases. So you search the slave schedules for the former owners with the same last name as the person you are trying to trace, just like we discussed earlier. Now, the Freedmen's Bureau marriage records give us dates of marriage, names of bride and groom, the participant's age, where they live, the officiant's name, and a book and or volume or page number where the actual certificate can be found. Now, I want to warn you that the Freedmen's Bureau records are missing some people, okay? That's a good way to put that. Because, see, every formerly enslaved person did not have a Freedmen's Bureau record. Now, bear in mind that in 1860, there were over 436,000 enslaved persons, while these labor contracts only have somewhere north of 36,000. So every enslaved person does not have a labor contract. Every formerly enslaved person does not have a Freedmen's Bureau marriage record or even a bank record. Also bear in mind that the Freedmen's Bureau comes into effect around 1865. The records that have survived and have been transferred to archival institutions date somewhere between 1865 and 1867, and the Bureau itself was disbanded in 1872. So another useful and often overlooked resource is the enumeration of educable children's census. Some people call the archives and they say they're looking for school records. Unfortunately, the Mississippi Department of Archives and History does not have proper school records. You cannot see your great-grandmother's grades, the courses she took, under which teacher, and to follow every school that she ever went to. However, we do have this educable children's census, which was some were collected by the counties on county microfilm. Others were recorded by the Department of Education records. These records date back as far as 1850 and run up to about 1965. And again, prior to 1865, African Americans generally do not appear in this type of record, or at least I have not seen them listed as free persons of color. These records will generally have at least one parent or guardian listed here with the children in their household who were of school age. Now, the surviving records for the educable children's census are sporadic and spread across a large time frame, again from 1850 up to 1965. And we have a lot of holes. They were not as regulated as the federal census records. Federal census are recorded once every 10 years. You're not going to find that type of regulation with the educable children's census. And you're also not going to find the same exact dates or years of recording from one county to the next. For example, Hinds County may have 1860, 1863, and 1864, while other counties may have 1850 and then jump to 1900. Some of the surviving records are just sporadic at best. Marriage and death records are another great resource of information. Going back to these county authored records, some marriage records have a section where parental information is recorded, but every county did not fashion their certificates in this way, so don't expect to see parental information on every single county marriage record that you find. However, one of my favorite counties to research, which is a county that I'm familiar with here, is Bolivar County. And right here at the top, it gives you a good amount of information about the participants' parents. It gives you the parents' names, the ages of the participants, and I think it gives you a bland address, or at least where you can find them. Sometimes you'll find a folded piece of paper on a marriage record. Now, that folded piece of paper could have parental information on it. Sometimes in those instances, it was where a parent had to give written permission for the bride to marry for whatever reason, mostly that she may have been underage. And you will find in the rare occasion that that piece of paper is the parent asking for a marriage record to be denied to the couple for whatever reason. Being a father of a daughter, probably that daddy didn't like the groom too much and didn't want them getting married. But if you're looking for marriage records and you see two images of the same record, make sure you pay attention to both of those, because it could have some information that you are actually looking for. Now, death certificates are another resource that is very helpful and yet can be frustrating for genealogy. Firstly, the state of Mississippi did not officially record birth or death records until November of 1912. There were some local efforts where some municipalities and a couple of counties prior to this dating created registries and deaths, births and deaths. However, these were not comprehensive. They were not statewide. The dates are narrow and scattered, and only a few places actually tried. One of the places to check would be Hinds County in the Jackson Municipal Records, and a couple of coastal counties tried to keep up with them. But by and large, keep in mind that the magical date for birth and death records is November of 1912. We do not have birth certificates officially here for that time period. The Department of Health and the Vital Records Division still holds with an iron fist all of the birth certificates. But here at the archives, we do have on microfilm and microfiche the death certificates from 1912 up to 1943. Military records. Now, military research is not my wheelhouse, but I can share with you that they are often an overlooked and underutilized record type that is still available for African American genealogy. Now, while we don't have service records for every military conflict that this country has ever engaged in, we do have some records from various time periods. One of my colleagues, Jeff Gambrone, gave a talk back in February of this year on military research at the archives, where he speaks of the different records and record types that we have from the numerous conflicts, and you can find that video on our department's YouTube channel. Let me back up a little bit. This is a World War II draft registration card. And as you can see, this is some good information to look for. You have the person's name. They give you the address in which he was living, and it also gives you a next of kin. Now, unfortunately, this gentleman only went by his initials, so unless you can link this gentleman to his parents on a census record, you may have to just use the initials of his parent in order to trace them. We also have World War I and World War II statement of service cards. We do have some county military discharge records. Now, the military discharge records might be a bit scattered. We also have the United States Colored Troops service records, and there are African American Confederate pension applications that we have in our holdings as well. Excuse me, I lost my name. Now, here is the African American Confederate pension application. Now, these oftentimes African Americans who went into the Civil War went as body servants, especially when you find them listed on the Confederate side. And this will be another record type that will help you link the formerly enslaved person to their former owners. And of course, if you get to this point, now again, not every enslaved person went to war with their former owners. Not every enslaved person signed up to be a United States colored troop either. So you don't feel bad if you don't find this record type for your ancestor. It's just another record that you don't have to, you won't have in your holdings. This is a United States Colored Troop Service Statement of Service card. Here in the first card is listed as their rank when they came in and the rank when they were mustered out of service. Now, one thing is that oftentimes you'll see that the place of birth differs from where the person either enlisted or where they were discharged from. So make sure if you find a record of your ancestor's service that you're paying attention to the information that's listed there, because that could very well lead you back to the next stage. Military discharge records. These were supposed to be filed in the county by the soldiers when they were discharged. And I forgive me, I don't remember which wars these were, but the ranges of those particular conflicts differ. And the date ranges within each county differs as well. Now, of course, that is according to what records have survived. So hopefully you will find a record of if you know that your relative served, hopefully you will find a record of his discharge, which could lead you to parental information, spousal information, or at the very least, where and his type of service while in the military. All right, so I hope this presentation has been helpful to you in getting you started with your genealogical journey. It was my intention to get you back to the Reconstruction time period and help you begin to break through some of those barriers. I would encourage you all to take your time with your journey, as this will be, it will not be a microwavable process. You won't find everything you're looking for in an instant. You're not going to find everything you want in one place. You may have to go to multiple places. It may take you multiple years. It may take your eyesight, because some of the records are on microfilm. Some of them are poorly written. Some of them are poorly preserved. But I hope and pray that this at least helps to get you started. Now, of course, you are here at 200 North Street here in Jackson, and you can feel free, if you do not already have one of our researcher's cards, you can go out to the front desk and sign up for a researcher's card and receive that today. And if you so desire, you can go into the library and begin some of your research. You can also give us a call. Our phone number here, 601-576-6876, goes to our Reference Services Division, where you can call and ask questions. You can also submit a research request to us. If you are not yet comfortable with doing the research yourself, we will give 1 hour of research time to each request that we receive. And again, this is an hour's worth of research time from one of our staff members. So when you write in, don't say, I want everything you got on John Brown. Tell us specifically what you are looking for and give us some background information. You can submit that by either writing and sending a letter to our P.O. Box, which is P.O. Box 571 here in Jackson, or you can submit an email to our reference services, refdesk@mdah.ms. That should be ms.gov. I got the wrong email address. So that should be mdah.ms.gov. George, why you let me use that wrong slide? All right, again, we thank you for coming, and we thank you for listening. And if you would like to, we have applications out front where you can apply for a researcher's card, and feel free to come by and visit us at any time. Thank y'all for coming.